مہربانی ہے،
وہ مخزن ہے دعاؤں کا، وہ رہبر رہنماؤں کا،
بنا مرشد جیے جانا کہاں کی عقل دانی ہے، بنا مرشد جیے جانا کہاں کی عقل دانی ہے۔ خلیفہ دل ہمارا ہے، خلافت زندگانی ہے، خلافت فصل گل بھی ہے، بہار جاودانی ہے، بہار جاودانی ہے۔ خلیفہ دل ہمارا ہے، خلافت زندگانی ہے، خلافت فصل گل بھی ہے، بہار جاودانی ہے، بہار جاودانی ہے۔ خلافت کے بنا دنیا خزاؤں کے اثر میں تھی،
خلافت ہے گل تازہ، یہ خوشبو کی روانی ہے،
خلافت تیز لہروں میں کھویا بھی ہے ناؤ بھی،
خلافت تپت صحرا میں گھٹا کی سائے بانی ہے، خلافت تپت صحرا میں گھٹا کی سائے بانی ہے۔
خلیفہ دل ہمارا ہے، خلافت زندگانی ہے، خلافت فصل گل بھی ہے، بہار جاودانی ہے، بہار جاودانی ہے۔ خلیفہ دل ہمارا ہے، خلافت زندگانی ہے، خلافت فصل گل بھی ہے، بہار جاودانی ہے، بہار جاودانی ہے۔
Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, head of the worldwide Ahmadiyya Muslim community.
بہار جاودانی ہے، بہار جاودانی ہے۔
خلافت باپ کا سایہ، خلافت ماں کی شفقت ہے،
خلافت عہد پیری میں عصا کی قدردانی ہے،
خلافت فضل ربانی، خلافت فیض یزدانی،
ہمیں ایمان اور صالح عمل کی یاد دہانی ہے، ہمیں ایمان اور صالح عمل کی یاد دہانی ہے۔ خلیفہ دل ہمارا ہے، خلافت زندگانی ہے،
Recitation of the Holy Quran, and I request Mahmood Wardi Sahib to come and recite a portion of the Holy Quran and also the translation, please. Wardi Sahib?
السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ۔ اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم، بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم۔ آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين جزاك
Jazakallah. Translation? No translation? Okay, Nazm by Mujahid Javed Sahib. ایک قطرہ اس کے فضل سے دریا بنا دیا.
السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ. دیکھو خدا نے جہاں کو جھکا دیا, گمنام پا کے چہرائی عالم بنا دیا. دیکھو خدا نے ایک جہاں کو جھکا دیا, گمنام پا کے شہرائے عالم بنا دیا. جو کچھ میری مراد تھی سب کچھ دکھا دیا. جو کچھ میری مراد تھی سب کچھ دکھا دیا. میں ایک غریب تھا, مجھے بے دنیا کی نعمتوں سے کوئی بھی نہیں رہی، دنیا کی نعمتوں سے کوئی بھی نہیں رہی، جو اس نے مجھ کو اپنی عنایات سے نہ دی، ایک قطرہ اس کے فضل نے دریا بنا دیا، ایک قطرہ اس کے فضل نے دریا بنا دیا، میں خاک تھا اسی نے ثریا بنا دیا۔
غلام احمد کی غلام احمد کی خلافت احمدیہ نعرہ تکبیر۔
ایک قطرہ اس کے فضل نے دریا بنا دیا، ایک قطرہ اس کے فضل نے دریا بنا دیا، میں خاک تھا اسی نے ثریا بنا دیا، مومن ہی فتح پاتے ہیں، انجام کار میں مومن ہی فتح پاتے ہیں، انجام کار میں ایسا ہی پاؤ گے سخنے کردگار میں، دیکھو خدا نے ایک جہاں کو جھکا دیا، گمنام پا کے شہرائے عالم بنا دیا۔
Jazakallah. Now, our first speaker this afternoon is going to speak on the topic of the rope of Allah, Khilafat, the rope of Allah, and Ta'al Fatah Tahir Sahib will come and address us.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. واعتصموا بحبل الله جميعا ولا تفرقوا. And hold fast all together to the rope of Allah and do not be divided. Respected Amir Sahib, respected chair, elders, brothers and sisters, the topic of my speech is Khilafat, the rope of Allah. Hazrat Khalifatul Masih I, Raziyallahu Anhu, gave a very interesting analogy to understand this concept, which is mentioned in the Holy Quran. He said the rope of Allah can be understood in the following manner, and that is through the game which we all know, many, if not most, have played, and everyone has seen, tug of war, or in Urdu, rasakashi. Hazur says that on one side you have Allah's side and the unity of the believers, and on the other side you have the opposing side who want to break the unity of the believers. Now on Allah's side, the person unifying everyone, telling everyone to pull and when to pull, the hiva as they call it, we can understand to be Khalifatul Masih. Khalifa Awwal explains that no matter how strong the team, if they don't pull in a unified way, if they don't listen to the hiva, if they aren't in sync, then they can never muster the strength to beat the other side. And this is the condition which we see in the Muslim Ummah today. They are disunited more than ever. Despite having the largest and the greatest resources of oil and wealth and other natural resources, despite Muslims being 2 billion in number, which is 24% of the global population today, despite having the Holy Quran, despite having the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, despite having the Ahadith, the Muslim Ummah today is in great jeopardy, disunited. And in fact, if you scroll on social media and the internet, there's all sorts of claims and cries and calls being made for Khilafat to be established, for some kind of leadership. Muslim youth yearn towards the so-called Ottoman Caliphate and say we need to be united once again. But the reality, ladies and gentlemen, is that only us sitting here today, Khilafat Ahmadiyya, Jamaat Ahmadiyya, only we can claim today on the face of the earth that we have Khilafat and we are united by this. And in fact, our enemies see this, and this grows their enmity towards us. This enmity results in state-sponsored persecution, cold-blooded murdering of Ahmadis, the jailing of Ahmadis just because they said Assalamu alaikum. Yet the Jamaat holds firm to the rope of Allah and listens to the instructions of Khalifatul Masih despite this hatred, despite this persecution. The history of Khilafat shows that no matter how great the tide of enmity and hatred towards us, if believers hold on to this rope and listen to the heave of the Khalifa, they can never be destroyed. During the time of Khalifatul Masih I, and then during Hazrat Muslim Maud's time, very prominent members of the Jamaat, scholars, office bearers, the wealthy, they said we don't need Khilafat. We can lead the Jamaat ourselves. However, the Jamaat did bad of Hazrat Muslim Maud Raziyallahu anhu. And when these people, these prominent members of the Jamaat who had parted way with Khilafat Ahmadiyya, when they were leaving Qadian, they looked back and they said something. They said that these poor Ahmadis in Qadian, just give it 10 years and they will disappear. And Christians will take over Qadian. 115 years have passed and we see who Allah supported. The names of those who parted away from Khilafat are only recorded today in the history of our Jamaat as signs for the truthfulness of this Jamaat because they failed so miserably. During the time of Hazrat Qimsi Salis Rahmullah, the Jamaat continued to spread, especially in Pakistan. And in fact, busloads of non-Ahmadi Muslims would come to Rabwa. They would meet Hazur. They would sit with Hazur. They would look at Rabwa. They would look at the unity and the strength that Ahmadi Muslims had. And they would convert. Talimul Islam College, TI College. During that time, it became one of the most prestigious education institutions in the whole of Pakistan. And the rich, the wealthy, the famous, the educated, all wanted their children to go to this college. It gave birth to some of the best students Pakistan has ever seen. Great intellectual debates happened in TI College. Great sports competitions happened there because the level was so high. And this was all under the obedience, under the leadership of Khilafat Ahmadiyya. Then, finally, in 1974, our enemies grew so much in hatred that they declared Ahmadi Muslims and their Khalifa are not Muslims according to our constitution. In response, Khalifa Salis Rahmullah told Ahmadis, at that period when this constitutional law was declared, that remember, no one can ever wipe out the La ilaha illallah from your hearts. And as a result, many Ahmadis, many of whom will be sitting here today as well, they wore badges of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, and they proudly walked the streets of Pakistan, and many were jailed because of that. Khalifa Salih Rahmullah said to the Ahmadis that no matter the persecution, no matter the hatred, we will always be smiling. And the smiles continued, but so did the velocity and the intensity of the persecution. To the extent that right at the inception of the Khilafat of Hazrat Qimsi Rabi Rahmullah, Ziaul Haq ordered Ordinance XX. Now, no Ahmadi could read the Quran in Pakistan. No Ahmadi could say Assalamu alaikum. And no Ahmadi could even give the azan without being jailed. A warrant was given to arrest Hazur. But despite the patrols of the army, the patrols and warrants of the police, in all his majesty, in all his glory, whilst wearing his pagdi, Hazur flew out from Karachi, Pakistan, and came to the UK. And the rest, as they say, is history. A new dawn for the Islamic revival in the West started. We saw great institutions like MTA International, Humanity First, and the Waqf Nur scheme sprout up. And today, now we can see how much they flourished. In 2003, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, may Allah be his helper, was elected as Khalifatul Masih. And during Hazur's era, we have seen some of the most hurtful pages in the history of Ahmadiyyat. Whether the massacre of innocent Ahmadis in Lahore, whether the imprisonment of Ahmadis in Algeria, whether the attacks on Jalsa Salanas and mission houses in Bangladesh, whether the destruction of historic Ahmadi mosques in Pakistan, whether the mental torture a child in Pakistan, an Ahmadi child, has to go through while sitting in the classroom because his teacher and his peers are insulting him and insulting his faith. Whether the yearning and longing of an Ahmadi mother thinking about her son who was martyred. Whether the remembrance of a wife for a husband. Whether the memories a daughter had about her father. And whether the friendship a sister recalls about her brother, all of whom were martyred. Whether the so-called Muslim influences online who spew nothing but hatred against the Jamaat. From all sides and all fronts, the Jamaat has been attacked. Yet, holding onto the rope of Allah, listening to Khalifatul Masih, listening to his every instruction, the Jamaat has flourished during Hazur's time. It spread all across the world. Hazur has become a global figure, a beacon for peace and the solution to the world problems that we have today. MTH International has grown so much that it's difficult to keep track. Missionaries have been sent to so many countries that the names of those countries are even difficult to recognize. We see the beautiful scene every single year at Jalsa Salana UK, where Ahmadis from every ethnicity, from every background, from every nation come together and unite under Khilafat. Just yesterday, we heard amazing and astonishing and faith-inspiring accounts of people who Allah directly guided through dreams that you need to go and do bed of this person. Brothers and sisters, 115 years have passed. Many have come and gone who have claimed that they would destroy, God forbid, Khilafat, and they would destroy this Jamaat. Yet, their names are only preserved in our history books as signs for the truthfulness of the Jamaat because they failed. It is our responsibility to hold onto this rope of Allah, to listen to the Khalifa and unite and pull together. For if, God forbid, we ever decide not to, then we must remember the words of the promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam, who said that such people will be cut off from the Jamaat like dry branches are cut off from a tree. Let us remember that the Jamaat doesn't need us. We need the Jamaat and we need Khilafat for our spiritual betterment and for our worldly betterment. So for the sake of ourselves, for the sake of our future progenies, let us vow that we will always hold on to this rope of Khilafat and unify in being obedient to every call of Khalifatul Masih. May Allah enable us all to do this. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.
Our next speaker will also be addressing us in English. How can we establish a true relationship with Khilafat? I request Atif Rashid Sahib to come and address us, please.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. Amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The topic of my speech today is how to establish a true relationship with Khilafat. And if you think about it, from the moment that you're born, even before you're born, you are in need of an attachment. First, it's to your mother, and then to your father, and then to your siblings and your family. And then as you grow, you form more bonds and friendships, whether that's to a teacher or a mentor or a friend. And then you get married, and your spouse becomes the main source of your attention and attachment. And then you have children, and they're attached to you, and you're attached to them. So human life is full of attachments and relationships. We can't live without them. And these grow and develop, but they also wax and wane. And each of these relationships go through ups and downs and have to be maintained and worked hard for. For example, a successful marriage doesn't happen by chance. It needs constant communication, time, compromise, understanding. So every relationship in life has to be built and then maintained. And it's very much the same with a spiritual relationship. The Holy Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said that the difference between a man who prays and a man who does not is like the living and the dead. And that's the reason we pray 5 times a day, and why we're told to remember Allah day and night. Because to form and keep a relationship with Allah the Almighty requires constant work by us and regular efforts. Because if you forget your beloved, then your beloved will have no concern for you either. And it's a common human experience that when something comes easy to us, we often take it for granted, or we don't realize its true value, or we forget how hard it is for others to attain that same thing. Whether that's if you're born into wealth or health or intelligence, it comes easy to us, it's normal, so we don't show full gratitude. But that's the time to show gratitude. That's the time to be grateful, because Allah says that if you're grateful, then I will give you more. Now, some of you might be wondering, what has all this got to do with Khilafat? But I'll come to that. But many of you must have cottoned on to what I'm trying to say. Because gratitude isn't just a mere verbal profession of thanks. True gratitude is in using the things that you've been given in the best way and doing justice to them. So when Allah has given you something, saying Alhamdulillah frequently is incumbent upon us, but so is being loyal to Him and using the things that He has given us in the very best way. So for example, sometimes people are hesitant about meeting Hazur or writing a letter to him or seeking his guidance, thinking that Hazur is not going to read our letter, he's too busy, etc. But when Allah has given us Khilafat and made Him accessible to us and physically close to us and made Him a means of guidance and the acceptance of prayers, it would be ungrateful to not attach ourselves to the one Allah has appointed. One Khadim told me that often it happens that when he's writing a letter, before he's even sent it, the thing that he's prayed for happens. And often it's an experience that sometimes you're writing something or you're something that you want to happen, some task of yours isn't happening, but when you start writing letters to Hazur, suddenly that task becomes easier and it becomes accomplished. People remember God when they're in difficulty and often forget Him when they're in ease. And it's the same with Hazur. How often do people send letters informing Hazur of their successes, their progress, their happiness? Hazur gets happy at your happiness, just as a parent would be happy at your happiness. Imagine if everyone only sent him letters of grief, of woes and worry, and only went to see him when they were in need, but didn't respond when he called upon them. Don't you think that Hazur would want to see and hear about your achievements and successes as well? Don't you think that would make him pleased and happy and make him want to pray for you more, especially if he sees that your successes are for the sake of God and for the Jamaat, and that you're striving for Islam? So a relationship is always a two-way street. One Lajna member recently asked Hazur that though she is not a Waqf, how can she serve the Jamaat? How can she dedicate her life? And how can she become the delight of Hazur's eyes? And just by this question, Hazur became very pleased, and he said, MashaAllah, If this is your standard of thinking, then you will ultimately become the delight of the eyes. Then Hazur went on to mention that how if she was engaged in lajna activities, increased her religious knowledge, took care of her home, engaged in tabligh and served Islam, then when the Khalifa hears of such things, he feels happy and he prays for you as well. And Hazur said this is what's meant by the delight of the eyes. And this is having a true bond with Khilafat. Now, some people who've come from Pakistan, who've been completely deprived of the physical connection to Khilafat, it might be that they appreciate it more when they come here. But even then, when it becomes routine and day to day, we forget our blessings all too often, because now you've got it, it's become normal for us. But that's the time to show gratitude and to do justice to the favor of God upon us. And remember, a true relationship with Khilafat isn't related to close proximity in the physical sense. The Holy Prophet ﷺ conveyed his salam to two people who he could never meet. One was the promised Messiah ﷺ, and the other was Hazrat Awais Qarni ﷺ. He never had the honor of meeting him, yet Hazrat Awais Qarni is still considered a companion. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said that I smell the sweet fragrance of paradise from Yemen, where Awais Qarni is occupied serving his mother, so he cannot come to physically meet me. The Holy Prophet ﷺ taught love and obedience and service to the mother, and Hazrat Awais Qarni was practically displaying these values, and so became the beloved of the Holy Prophet ﷺ and received his salam. And he was close to him spiritually, despite being physically distant. And there were many people physically close to the Holy Prophet ﷺ, but were spiritually distant and had no connection with him, nor could they benefit from his teachings. There were hypocrites amongst the Muslims who would see and meet the Holy Prophet ﷺ all the time, and he knew who they were. They were right next to him. Yet, can we say that they had a relationship with him? Do we count them amongst the companions? And then there were others who were also physically close and near to the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And they did have And those people did have a true relationship with the Holy Prophet ﷺ. And those were the companions. What was their demeanor? It was unquestioning loyalty, devotion, obedience. They were ready to plunge themselves into the ocean at the slightest indication of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Hazur himself in the recent Shura address said that to be a companion does not require physical proximity to one's leader. Rather, a spiritual and emotional connection allied with unyielding loyalty is fundamental to companionship. So our job is to become like the companions. These were the best of creation, the ones whom Allah has said that He is pleased with. So we don't need to look elsewhere for progress, for honor, for motivation. We have it here with us. We have all been given the opportunity to become like the companions. So being close to Khilafat means being spiritually connected to him. And the only real way to do that is to be connected to Allah the Almighty, because the Khalifa is the representative of Allah on earth. And this is what Hazur spoke about in his Friday sermon yesterday. Hazur said that during his Khilafat, opponents have tried to create disorder and have tried to bring an end to the Jamaat. Ahmadis have been martyred or been bribed by worldly things. However, God has continued to increase Ahmadis in their faith, certainty, and relationship with Khilafat. Whether that's in Asia, Europe, America, or Africa, every person's relationship with Khilafat has been established by God. There is none other than God who can create such love in the hearts of the people. And Hazur said that wherever he goes in the world, he sees this love in the people. Now look, we're sitting in the West, and we live in a very individualized society where individualistic thinking is given prominence. So some people might think like, isn't this outdated? Isn't everyone free? Why do we need to pledge obedience to somebody else? Aren't we smart enough to decide for ourselves? Why do we need someone else to tell us what to do? Right? These thoughts arise sometimes. We're independent, people say. But none of this is true. Because if this was true, then you wouldn't have the billions of people who follow social media influencers and believe every word of theirs. You wouldn't have footballers and celebrities who capture the attention of millions of fans. You wouldn't have people spending millions to hire experts and life coaches to advise them and help them attain the heights of physical and worldly success. The fact is that today, no one knows what's true and what's not. Even Islam has been distorted and misinterpreted, so people are being misled. Online influencers might say things which seem pleasing to you, but other things would be totally vile and against moral standards. So how can you trust them? How can you trust anyone to teach you how to live a good life? The fact is, we're always in need of a mentor, a guide, and a leader. And today, we have a God-given one at our doorstep, and only we have it. This is the likes of which the entire Muslim world, in fact, the entire world, Muslim or not, is yearning for, is thirsting for. And it's only we who have been given that blessing and privilege. So, a true relationship is in absorbing yourself to the Khalifa and connecting yourself to God by listening to his words, watching his speeches, and responding to his calls. Every week, just watch This Week with Huzur, because for many it was a lifeline during COVID when we couldn't physically meet him. And if you listen to the Friday sermons, and if you're listening and watching and absorbing and implementing, then you will have a true relationship with Khilafat. May Allah enable us to forge a true bond with Khilafat and become the delight of his eyes.
Jazakallah. Allah bless you. Now we have a Nazm recital, and I request Mubarak Siddiqui Sahib to come and recite the poem, Barkat Khilafat.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. یہ ساری برکتیں، یہ ساری رونقیں خلیفہ وقت حضرت امیر المومنین ایدہ اللہ تعالیٰ بنصر العزیز کے بابرکت وجود سے ہیں۔ اللہ تعالیٰ ہمارے پیارے حضور کی عمر و صحت میں برکت عطا فرمائے۔ جماعت احمدیہ کو مٹانے کے لیے بہت سے قانون بنائے گئے، ہمارے گھر جلائے گئے، ہمارے بھائیوں کو زندان میں جیلوں میں ڈالا گیا، شہید کیا گیا، لیکن اللہ تعالیٰ کے فضل کے ساتھ امام وقت کی قیادت میں ترقیات کا سفر جاری ہے۔ ان ساری باتوں کو ایک نظم میں رکھا گیا ہے۔ تاریخ جماعت ہے کہ تاریخ وفا ہے، تاریخ جماعت ہے کہ تاریخ وفا ہے، سائے کی طرح سایہ فگن ہم پہ خدا ہے، اور رات جو آئے بھی تو پروانوں کو غم کیا، جلتا ہوا پر نور خلافت کا دیا ہے، تاریخ جماعت ہے کہ تاریخ وفا ہے۔ قانون بنائے ہیں بہت اہل ستم نے، قانون بنائے ہیں بہت اہل ستم نے، اب لے نہ کوئی ان کے سوا نام خدا کا، ان سادہ مزاجوں سے کوئی جا کے یہ پوچھے، بندے بھی کبھی روک سکے کام خدا کا۔ ساتھ اپنے قانون بنائے ہیں بہت اہل ستم نے، اب لے نہ کوئی ان کے سوا نام خدا کا، ان سادہ مزاجوں سے کوئی جا کے یہ پوچھے، بندے بھی کبھی روک سکے کام خدا کا۔ ساتھ اپنے محمد کی مسیحا کی دعا ہے، تاریخ جماعت ہے کہ تاریخ وفا ہے۔ آتی ہے صدا روز شہیدوں کے لہو سے، آتی ہے صدا روز شہیدوں کے لہو سے، یہ دیپ ہواؤں سے بجھائے نہ بجھیں گے، قسمت کا لکھا پڑھ نہیں سکتے ہو تو سن لو، ایک دیپ بجھاؤ گے تو 100 اور جلیں گے۔ आती है सदा रोज शहीदों के लहू से, ये दीप हवाओं से बुझाए न बुझेंगे, किस्मत का लिखा पढ़ नहीं सकते हो तो सुन लो, एक दीप बुझाओगे तो 100 और जलेंगे। माने न कोई माने मगर ऐसा हुआ है, तारीख़ जमात है कि तारीख़ वफा है। जिंदान में बैठा हुआ कैदी कोई बोला, जिंदान में बैठा हुआ कैदी कोई बोला, तस्लीम मुझे है कि मेरा जुर्म वफा है। हाथों पे मेरे जख्म जो तुम देख रहे हो, टूटे हुए शीशों को उठाने की सज़ा है। ये जुर्म मगर है तो सरे आम किया है, तारीख़ जमात है कि तारीख़ वफा है। और कुछ इसलिए हिजरत भी ज़रूरी थी हमारी, कुछ इसलिए हिजरत भी ज़रूरी थी हमारी, उस शहर सितमगर में जफाकार बहुत थे। कुछ इसलिए हिजरत भी ज़रूरी थी हमारी, उस शहर सितमगर में जफाकार बहुत थे। कुछ उनको भी नफ़रत से अक़ीदत थी ज़्यादा, कुछ हम भी मोहब्बत के परस्तार बहुत थे। पहले से कहीं बढ़ के हमें उसने दिया है, तारीख़ जमात है कि तारीख़ वफा है। और सजदों में लुटा देते हैं अश्कों के नगीने, सजदों में लुटा देते हैं अश्कों के नगीने। हम लोग जफाओं की शिकायत नहीं करते, कुछ और बढ़ा देते हैं लौ अपने लहू में। हम तेज़ हवाओं की शिकायत नहीं करते, हम वो हैं जिन्हें दर से दुआ सब्र व रज़ा है। तारीख़ जमात है कि तारीख़ वफा है। एक ये भी सदाकत का निशान वक्त ने देखा, एक ये भी सदाकत का निशान वक्त ने देखा, जो उसके वफादार रहे शाद रहे हैं, और जिनको डसा उनकी रिया उनकी अना ने, वो लोग बहारों में भी बर्बाद रहे हैं। उस नूरों धुले शख्स को ताईद खुदा है, तारीख़ जमात है कि तारीख़ वफा है। उस नूरो धुले शख्स को ताईद खुदा है, तारीख़ जमात है कि तारीख़ वफा है। और रातों की स्याही को ज़िया कह नहीं सकते, रातों की स्याही को ज़िया कह नहीं सकते, हम जहर की पुड़िया को दवा कह नहीं सकते। हर मोड़ पे दुश्मन हो ये मंजूर है, लेकिन हम लोग ज़माने को खुदा कह नहीं सकते। दुश्मन भी ये माने हैं कि ऐसा ही हुआ है, तारीख़ जमात है कि तारीख़ वफा है। और नज़्म का आखिरी बंद है कि इस शहरे परेशान में क्या हो नहीं सकता, इस शहरे परेशान में क्या हो नहीं सकता, एक शख्स मगर दिल से जुदा हो नहीं सकता, एक शख्स मगर दिल से जुदा हो नहीं सकता। दुनिया ने कहा जुर्म है अब इश्क व मोहब्बत, और हमने कहा फ़र्ज़ कज़ा हो नहीं सकता, और हमने कहा फ़र्ज़ कज़ा हो नहीं सकता। वो शख्स तो धड़कन में दुआओं में बसा है, तारीख़ जमात है कि तारीख़ वफा है। और बरकत है खिलाफत की के एक हाथ पे यारो, बरकत है खिलाफत की के एक हाथ पे यारो। लाखों हैं करोड़ों हैं जो एक जान हुए हैं, तूफ़ान की मर्ज़ी थी उजड़ जाएं ये, लेकिन बूटे जो लगाए थे गुलिस्तान हुए हैं। सब बरकत है खिलाफत की के एक हाथ पे यारो, लाखों हैं करोड़ों हैं जो एक जान हुए हैं। तूफ़ान की मर्ज़ी थी उजड़ जाएं ये, लेकिन बूटे जो लगाए थे गुलिस्तान हुए हैं। सब उसकी अता उसकी अता उसकी अता है, तारीख़ जमात है कि तारीख़ वफा है। जज़ाकल्लाह।
Jazakallah. Our next speaker this afternoon will be addressing us in Urdu. And the topic is The Fortress of Safety and Security by Atal Qudusaid. There is translation sets at the back if anybody wishes to listen to the English translation.
اشہدو ان لا الہ الا اللہ وحدہ لا شریک لہ واشہد ان محمدا عبدہ ورسولہ اما بعد فاعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم.
Kudusab, can you just hold on 1 second? Let these youngsters get their earpieces. Let them get their earpieces. Jazakallah, I think all the youngsters have their earpieces now. You can start, please.
مکرم و محترم امیر صاحب برطانیہ و سامعین کرام، السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ. خاکسار کو ارشاد ہوا ہے کہ خلافت ایک عافیت کا حصار کے موضوع پر کچھ گزارشات پیش کرو. اس اہم مضمون کا ذکر قرآن کریم، احادیث نبویہ اور تحریرات حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام میں بخوبی ملتا ہے. چنانچہ قرآن کریم میں اس مضمون کا ذکر آیت استخلاف کے اس حصے میں بیان کیا گیا ہے، وَلَا يُبَدِّلَنَّهُم مِّن بَعْدِ خَوْفِهِمْ أَمْنًا، یعنی اور ان کی خوف کی حالت کے بعد ضرور انہیں امن کی حالت میں بدل دے گا. پھر احادیث کا مطالعہ کریں تو صحیح بخاری میں یہ حدیث ملتی ہے، اِنَّمَا الْإِمَامُ جُنَّةٌ يُقَاتَلُ مِن وَرَاءٍ، یعنی امام تو ڈھال ہے جس کے پیچھے قتال کیا جاتا ہے. اسی مضمون کو حضرت اقدس مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام اپنے منظوم کلام میں یوں بیان فرماتے ہیں، صدق سے میری طرف آؤ اسی میں خیر ہے، ہیں درندے ہر طرف میں عافیت کا ہوں حصار. سامعین کرام، خلافت کے ذریعے عافیت کے حصار کے قیام کے نظارے ہمیں ابتدائی اسلام میں بھی نظر آتے ہیں اور اسلام کی بعثت ثانیہ میں بھی. ابتدائی اسلام کا واقعہ ہے، ہمارے آقا و مولا حضرت رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم نے شام کی طرف بعض ناگزیر وجوہات کی بنا پر لشکر کشی کا حکم دیا اور اس کی سپہ سالاری حضرت اسامہ بن زید رضی اللہ عنہ کو سپرد کی. ابھی یہ لشکر روانہ نہیں ہوا تھا کہ اللہ تعالیٰ کی غالب تقدیر کے تحت ہمارے پیارے آقا حضرت رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم اپنے رب کے حضور حاضر ہو گئے. اس خبر کا سننا تھا کہ صحابہ کرام غم کے مارے نڈھال ہو گئے. نیز منافقین اور دشمنان اسلام نے اس موقع کا فائدہ اٹھاتے ہوئے ہر طرف فتنے و فساد کا جال بچھا دیا اور پورے عرب میں ایک ارتداد کی لہر دوڑ گئی۔ بعض نے زکوٰۃ کی ادائیگی سے انکار کر دیا، بعض نے جھوٹی نبوت کا دعویٰ کر دیا اور بعض نے علل اعلان مدینے پر حملے کی تیاریاں شروع کر دیں۔ ایسے میں خدائی تقدیر کے تحت اللہ تعالیٰ نے اپنی دوسری قدرت کا نظارہ دکھایا اور حضرت ابو بکر صدیق رضی اللہ عنہ کو منصب خلافت پر مامور فرمایا۔ اس نازک وقت میں کبار صحابہ حتیٰ کہ حضرت عمر رضی اللہ عنہ نے بھی حضرت ابو بکر صدیق کو مشورہ دیا کہ فی الحال لشکر حضرت اسامہ بن زید کو نہ بھیجا جائے ورنہ مدینہ کی حفاظت کا کوئی انتظام نہ ہوگا۔ لیکن خدا کے قائم کردہ اولو العزم خلیفۃ الرسول حضرت ابو بکر صدیق نے اعلان فرمایا، اگر کتے اور بھیڑیے بھی مجھے گھسیٹتے پھریں تو بھی میں اس لشکر کو رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کے فیصلے کے مطابق بھجوا کر رہوں گا، اور میں رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کا جاری فرمودہ فیصلہ نافذ کر کے رہوں گا۔ ہاں، اگر بستیوں میں میرے سوائے کوئی بھی باقی نہ رہے تو بھی میں اس فیصلے کو نافذ کروں گا۔ تاریخ اسلام شاہد ہے کہ اس دلیرانہ فیصلے کا دشمنان اسلام اور مرتدین پر ایسا روپ پڑا کہ ان کی ہمتیں جواب دے گئیں، مدینے پر ان کے حملے کے ارادے دھرے کے دھرے رہ گئے، ان کی جمعیتیں تتر بتر ہو گئیں، اور یوں خلافت حقہ کے ذریعے مومنین کی جماعت نے عافیت کے حصار کا ایک عظیم و شان نظارہ دیکھا۔ سامعین کرام، اب میں آپ کو اسلام کی نشت ثانیہ میں عافیت کے حصار کے قیام کے ایک اور عظیم و شان نظارے کی طرف لیے چلتا ہوں۔ خدائی تقدیر اور پیش گوئیوں کے مطابق اللہ تعالیٰ کی طرف سے حضرت اقدس مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام کی بعثت ہوتی ہے۔ آپ الہی تائیدات اور فرشتوں کے جلووں میں تشریف لاتے ہیں اور اپنے مشن کی تکمیل یعنی ایمان کو ثریا سے زمین پر واپس لانے، مسلمانوں میں بطور حکم عدل کے فیصلہ کرنے اور صلیبی یلغار کو توڑنے کے بعد الہی تقدیر کے تحت 26 مئی سن 1908 کو اپنے مالک کی حقیقی کے حضور حاضر ہو جاتے ہیں۔ دشمن ایک دفعہ پھر خوش ہوتا ہے کہ یہ سلسلہ اب ختم ہو جائے گا۔ دہلی کے ایک اخبار کرزن گزٹ نے ہرزہ سرائی کرتے ہوئے لکھا، اب مرزائیوں میں کیا رہ گیا ہے، ان کا سٹ کر چکا ہے۔ ایسے میں اللہ تعالیٰ اپنی غالب تقدیر سے حضرت حکیم مولوی نور الدین رضی اللہ عنہ کو منصب خلافت متمکن افروز فرماتا ہے۔ اس نازک موقع پر دشمنوں کے ساتھ ساتھ بعض اپنے بھی مل جاتے ہیں اور نظام خلافت کو ختم کرنے کے درپے ہو جاتے ہیں، مگر اس دفعہ بھی دشمن کو منہ کی کھانی پڑتی ہے اور خدا کا قائم کردہ خلیفہ باوجود اپنی کمزور صحت کے نظام خلافت کے استحکام کے لیے ایک مضبوط چٹان بن کر کھڑا ہو جاتا ہے۔ منصب خلافت متمکن ہونے کے بعد اپنے پہلے ہی مضمون میں حضرت خلیفۃ المسیح اول رضی اللہ عنہ نے یہ پرشوکت اعلان فرمایا، اب دشمن جلسے کریں اور خوشیاں منائیں، وہ پہلی زبردست قدرت الہیہ اور نصرت الہیہ کو تو دیکھ چکے ہیں، اب وہ دوسری قدرت کا تماشا دیکھیں۔ یہ درخت محض اللہ تعالیٰ کے فضل سے جیسے پہلے محفوظ رہا ہے ویسا ہی ابھی پھولے گا اور پھلے گا۔ تاریخ احمدیت شاہد ہے کہ خلافت اولیٰ کے قیام سے مومنین کی جماعت کو ایک دفعہ پھر سے عافیت کا حصار نصیب ہو گیا اور منافقوں اور دشمنوں کی تمام کوششیں ناکام و نامراد ہو گئیں۔ حضرات، یہ داستان بہت لمبی ہے اور وقت محدود، مختصراً یہ کہ خلافت ثانیہ میں بھی اور خلافت ثالثہ میں بھی اور خلافت رابعہ میں بھی اور اب خدا کے فضل و رحم سے خلافت خامسہ میں بھی اس حصار نے جماعت کو مضبوطی سے تھاما ہوا ہے، چاہے 1933 کے مجلس احرار کی جلغار ہو یا 1947 میں تقسیم ہند کے پرشوب حالات، یا 1953 کے فسادات ہوں یا 1974 کی آزمائش یا 1984 کے بعد سے شروع ہونے والی مخالفت جو اب تک چلی جا رہی ہے، خلافت کے سائے تلے، خلافت کی ڈھال کے پیچھے جماعت کو ایک کے بعد دوسرے ابتلا سے خدا کے فضل و رحم سے کامیابی کی طرف بڑھتی چلی جا رہی ہے۔ تاریخ گواہ ہے کہ جس نے خلافت سے ٹکر لینے کی کوشش کی اور خدائی جماعت پر ہاتھ ڈالنے کا ارادہ کیا، خدا نے اس کے نام و نشان مٹا دیے۔ 1974 کے دلخراش واقعات کے پیچھے جس شخص کا ہاتھ تھا اور جس نے دعویٰ کیا کہ وہ جماعت کے ہاتھ میں کشکول پکڑا دے گا، وہ خود کشکول پکڑ کر اپنی زندگی کی بھیک مانگتا ہوا بڑی ہی عبرت انگیز حالت میں اس دنیا سے رخصت ہوا۔ 1984 میں زمانے کے فرعون نے یہ منصوبہ بنایا کہ خلیفہ وقت کو ایک آرڈیننس کے تحت گرفتار کر کے قید کر دیا جائے اور اگلے خلیفہ کا انتخاب ہی نہ ہونے دیا جائے اور یوں جماعت تتر بتر ہو جائے۔ پر خدا نے نہ صرف خلیفہ وقت کو بحفاظت بذریعہ ہجرت لندن پہنچا دیا بلکہ اس فرعون کا نام و نشان مٹا دیا. نہ اسے زمین میں جگہ ملی اور نہ ہی آسمان میں. مخالفت کے ایسے ہی حالات میں حضرت خلیفۃ المسیح رابع رحمہ اللہ نے احباب جماعت کو تسلی دیتے ہوئے کیا خوب فرمایا: تمہیں مٹانے کا زوم لے کر اٹھے ہیں جو خاک کے بگولے، خدا اڑا دے گا خاک ان کی، کرے گا رسوائے عام کہنا. اب خدا کے فضل و رحم سے خلافت خامسہ کے بابرکت دور میں جماعت اس حبل اللہ کو تھامے ہوئے باوجود تمام مخالفتوں کے عافیت کے ایک عظیم الشان حصار کے تحت ترقیات کے ایک دور کے بعد ایک نئے دور میں داخل ہوتی چلی جا رہی ہے. آج سے تقریباً 10-12 سال قبل جبکہ کسی کے وہم و گمان میں بھی نہ تھا، خلیفہ وقت کی دوربین نے گاہ نے بھانپ لیا کہ دنیا تیزی کے ساتھ تیسری عالمی جنگ کی طرف بڑھتی چلی جا رہی ہے. حضور اقدس نے نہ صرف عالمی لیڈروں کو ان خطرات سے خبردار کرنا شروع کر دیا بلکہ عافیت کے اس حصار نے احباب جماعت کو بھی ہدایات جاری فرمائیں کہ دعاؤں کے ساتھ ساتھ احتیاطی تدابیر کو بھی اختیار کریں اور اپنے گھروں میں ضروری اشیاء خرد و نوش اکٹھی کر لیں تابہ وقت ضرورت پریشانی و مشکلات سے بچا جا سکے. سامعین کرام، اس حقیقت میں تو کوئی بھی شک نہیں کہ خلافت ایک عافیت کا حصار ہے، لیکن اس حصار کی پناہ میں آنے اور اسے فائدہ اٹھانے کے لیے ہم احمدیوں پر بھی کچھ ذمہ داریاں عائد ہوتی ہیں. انہی کی طرف توجہ دلاتے ہوئے ہمارے پیارے امام حضرت خلیفۃ المسیح الخامس اید اللہ تعالیٰ بنصر العزیز فرماتے ہیں: پس اس ڈھال کے پیچھے رہو گے تو بچت کے سامان ہے، اور ڈھال کے پیچھے رہنا یہی ہے کہ کامل اطاعت کرو. اسی مضمون پر روشنی ڈالتے ہوئے حضرت اقدس مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام بیان فرماتے ہیں: میرے ہاتھ میں ایک چراغ ہے، جو شخص میرے پاس آتا ہے ضرور وہ اس روشنی سے حصہ لے گا، مگر جو شخص وہم اور بدگمانی سے دور بھاگتا ہے وہ ظلمت میں ڈال دیا جائے گا. اس زمانے کا حسن حسین میں ہوں، جو مجھ میں داخل ہوتا ہے وہ چوروں اور قزاقوں اور درندوں سے اپنی جان بچائے گا، مگر جو شخص میری دیواروں سے دور رہنا چاہتا ہے ہر طرف سے اس کو موت درپیش ہے اور اس کی لاش بھی سلامت نہیں رہے گی. مجھ میں کون داخل ہوتا ہے؟ وہی جو بدی کو چھوڑتا ہے اور نیکی کو اختیار کرتا ہے، اور کجی کو چھوڑتا اور راستے پر قدم مارتا ہے اور شیطان کی غلامی سے آزاد ہوتا اور خدا تعالیٰ کا ایک بندہ مطیع بن جاتا ہے. ہر ایک جو ایسا کرتا ہے وہ مجھ میں ہے اور میں اس میں ہوں. پھر آپ فرماتے ہیں: میری طرف دوڑو، کہ وقت ہے کہ جو شخص اس وقت میری طرف دوڑتا ہے میں اس کو اس سے تشبیہ دیتا ہوں کہ جو عین طوفان کے وقت جہاز میں بیٹھ گیا. لیکن جو شخص مجھے نہیں مانتا میں دیکھ رہا ہوں کہ وہ طوفان میں اپنے تئیں ڈال رہا ہے اور کوئی بچنے کا سامان اس کے پاس نہیں. نیز آپ اپنے منظوم کلام میں فرماتے ہیں: ایک طوفان ہے خدا کے قہر کا اب جوش پر، نوح کی کشتی میں جو بیٹھے وہی ہو رستگار. آخر پر خاکسار حضرت سیدنا حضرت خلیفۃ المسیح الخامس اید اللہ تعالیٰ بنصر العزیز کے گزشتہ روز کے خطبہ جمعہ کے ایک اقتباس اور پیغام پر اپنی تقریر کا اختتام کرتا ہے. حضور اقدس فرماتے ہیں: انشاءاللہ تعالیٰ جماعت احمدیہ اللہ تعالیٰ کے وعدے کے مطابق اور آن حضرت صلی اللہ علیہ وسلم کی پیش گوئی کے مطابق کہ خلافت علی منہاج نبوہ جو حضرت مسیح موعود علیہ الصلوۃ والسلام سے شروع ہوگی تا قیامت چلے گی، ہمیشہ قائم رہے گی اور کوئی دشمن اس کا بال بھی بکا نہیں کر سکتا. بس ہمیں کوشش کرنی چاہیے کہ اپنے ایمانوں میں مزید جلا پیدا کریں اور خلافت احمدیت سے اپنے آپ کو جوڑے رکھیں اور اس کے قائم رکھنے کے لیے کسی قربانی سے بھی دریغ نہ کریں. اللہ تعالی ہم سب کو اس کی توفیق عطا فرمائے. آمین. وآخر دعوانا ان الحمدللہ رب العالمین.
Jazakallah. Allah bless you. Next we have a poem, and I request Umar Sharif Sahib to come and recite the poem. This was a poem written by late Mir Allah Bakhsh Taseem Sahib. Hamara khilafat par iman hai.
السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. کلام: مکرم و محترم میر اللہ بخش تسنیم صاحب،
ہمارا خلافت پہ ایمان ہے، یہ ملت کی تنظیم کی جان ہے. ہمارا خلافت پہ ایمان ہے، یہ ملت کی تنظیم کی جان ہے. اسی سے ہر ایک مشکل آسان ہے، گریزاں ہے اس سے جو نادان ہے، گریزاں ہے اس سے جو نادان ہے. رہیں گے خلافت سے وابستہ ہم، جماعت کا قائم ہے اس سے بھرم. رہیں گے خلافت سے وابستہ ہم، جماعت کا قائم ہے اس سے بھرم. نہ ہوگا کبھی اپنا اخلاص کم، بڑھے گا اسی سے ہمارا قدم، بڑھے گا اسی سے ہمارا قدم. خلافت سے زیرے نگی ہو جہاں، خلافت سے ملت ہمیشہ جواں. خلافت سے اسلام ہے کامراں، خلافت کا اونچا ہے ہر دم نشان، خلافت کا اونچا ہے ہر دم نشان. خلافت کا جب تک رہے گا قیام، نہ کمزور ہوگا ہمارا نظام. خلافت کا جب تک رہے گا قیام، نہ کمزور ہوگا ہمارا نظام. خلافت کا جس کو نہیں احترام، زمانے میں ہوگا نہ وہ شاد کام، زمانے میں ہوگا نہ وہ شاد کام. خلافت سے لطف خدا ہم عنان، خلافت تو ہے احمدیت کی جان. خلافت سے لطف خدا ہم عنان، خلافت تو ہے احمدیت کی جان. تمنا اس سے ہے اپنی جوان، ہے آسان اس سے ہر ایک امتحان، ہے آسان اس سے ہر ایک امتحان. خلافت سے زندہ دلوں میں خدا، خلافت غریبوں کا ہے آسرا. خلافت سے زندہ دلوں میں خدا، خلافت غریبوں کا ہے آسرا. نہ کیوں جان و دل سے ہوں اس پر فدا، اسی کے ہے دم سے ہماری بقا، اسی کے ہے دم سے ہماری بقا. ہمارا خلافت پہ ایمان ہے، ये मिल्लत की तंजीम की जान है, इसी से हर एक मुश्किल आसान है। गुरेज़ा है इससे जो नादान है, गुरेज़ा है इससे जो नादान है।
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My respected colleagues and all the participants of this Yawm Khilafat, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today we are here to celebrate a very, very special day. This day is important day in each and every one of our lives. And especially the new generations who are starting their life, one could say, in a world which is torn with conflict, which is losing direction, which is taking people into virtual reality. But what does that reality really signify and what does it mean? And we are seeing this conflict unwind throughout the world. We're seeing that each day new inventions are coming. We have programs that are coming up with such speed that even the originators of these programs are extremely worried because nobody is looking at the consequences of what is happening and the speed with which it's happening. This morning, Zuri Anwar had an audience, where a member of parliament had an audience with Zuri Anwar. And one of the questions that came up was indeed this new technology that's unfolding in front of our eyes. It is coming at such speed that even the governments who legislate and are supposed to manage it have no idea what to do. They're completely lost. And he was seeking guidance from Huzur Anwar. What is it that us, the politicians, can do to control this new issue that's facing the world? Now here is where the importance of Khilafat comes into its own. Because Huzur said to him, you have to reinforce the importance of the Creator. And if you can reinforce the importance of the Creator and bring people back to the Creator, that is the only way you'll be able to win this struggle that we're going through. Now, Allah the Almighty in the Holy Quran has stated, Allah has promised to those amongst you who believe and do good work that He will surely make them successors in the earth, as He made successors from amongst those who were before them, and that He will surely establish for them their religion, which He has chosen for them, and that He will surely give them in exchange security and peace after their fear. They will worship me, they will not associate anything with me, And those who are ungrateful after that will be the rebellious. So our safety and security of this world entirely lies in Allah's hand. And unfortunately, what we are finding is that the world is moving further and further away from Allah, and we are seeing that the governments, especially in the West, are bringing rights that go totally against the teaching of the Holy Quran. So how are we going to bring these people back onto the right path? Allah has promised Messiah that inshallah his message will spread to the four corners of the earth, and that people will come and accept the message that he's brought, which is true Islam. Now, we live in a world where there are huge challenges, especially for our next generations. And these challenges, unless we start addressing them ourselves, will continue to grow. I, as Amir, continue to meet with parents who express concerns. Sometimes they do not know how to deal with the issues relating to their children. And the problem that I normally find is that the parents themselves are not fully on the righteous path. When you yourself start to deviate from the true path, and when you yourself don't live an honest existence, then your progeny will continue to deviate even further away from that path. And there is only one path, the path to Allah the Almighty. And at this moment in time, the whole Muslim Ummah is looking to see how they can get guidance to get back onto that path. We are seeing what is happening in Pakistan at this moment in time. I would take this opportunity to welcome some of the new arrivals who are here. I know you have come from very difficult circumstances in Pakistan, where a recent delegation, parliamentary delegation, that went on behalf of our Jamaat has just returned. And I was speaking to the leader of the delegation, Fleur Anderson, who is a member of parliament for Putney, our Masjid Fazl area. And she said that her assessment of the situation of the Ahmadis in Pakistan is that she is looking to report our case to the Genocide Commission. And another case where one of our young researchers from here went to interview some journalists in Pakistan, and they asked the question, this pressure that we are putting on the Pakistani authorities from outside, is that having any impact in Pakistan? And the response was that if you did not put this pressure on the authorities, they'd be very happy to commit genocide against your Jamaat. Every day we are hearing stories about destructions of our mosques, target killings. They are targeting our senior office bearers on fictitious charges. They are attacking our school children. The recent case you heard of a 76-year-old lawyer in Karachi, Ahmadi lawyer, who, because his name had Sayyid as a prefix, the Lawyers Association, who are supposed to be educated, inferred that this caused them grief and therefore he should be prosecuted for using the name Sayyid in front of his name. We've seen how low the society has gone in Pakistan, that they're not stopping at anything. And when the society gets to this dire point, that is the point when they will need a Khalifa to give them direction. And that is the importance of Khilafat in the current world, because the Muslim Ummah everywhere seem to be totally lost. They have no idea what is right and what is wrong. They have no one leader who can give them the proper interpretation of what the Quran says. You go to one cleric, he will give you one interpretation. You go to another cleric. I mean, what is happening in Pakistan with our mosques, for instance, this entirely goes against Islamic injunctions. But it is their clerics who encourage them to do that. Therefore, the need for Khilafat at this moment in time in whole of the Muslim Ummah is very dire. Now, Allah the Almighty has a divine plan. The coming of the promised reformer was predicted. And the reason why a promised reformer was needed is because the Ummah had gone too far away from the original faith. He did not bring a new faith. He came to revive the true Islam, or the true teaching of Islam. Now, Allah has blessed us with His successors, as Allah had said in the Holy Quran, that I will give successors. So, those successors, under divine guidance, have been taking the Jamaat through some very difficult times. First, we saw what happened in Qadian after the demise of the promised Messiah, Islam. The first fitna took place within the Jamaat. The leaders of the Jamaat at that stage, some of them thought that they would be better at organizing the Jamaat than Khilafat. However, at that stage, Allah the Almighty then gave the Jamaat solace through the appointment of Hazrat Hakim Nuruddin, which brought the Jamaat back together. But that fitna again started at his demise, when the same people once again created the fitna, and when Hazrat Mirza Bashiruddin Mahmud Ahmad was elected as Khalifa, they said, this young boy cannot do anything for us, so we will create our own Jamaat. But look how divine intervention took that very young person to such heights, and those, the so-called learned members who thought that they would control everything, their names completely destroyed. Then, according to Allah's divine plan, the creation of Pakistan was very important because the Jamaat was going to spread during that period. And Allah the Almighty guided Hazrat Muslim Maud to ask Muhammad Ali Jinnah to go back to Pakistan to fight the Muslim case. And of course, Pakistan was created. And by the grace of Allah, those people who had accepted Ahmadiyyat were generally those people who had done their own research and understood the prophecy of Rasulullah Pak Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam about the second coming of the Messiah. And they accepted the promised Messiah sometime at huge personal cost to themselves. Sometimes their families left them, their spouses left them. They were completely singled out from their families. And yet they stood very firm in their belief. And lots of you sitting here today are second, third, fourth generation of people who made the true sacrifice during that period. And they held very firmly to their faith in spite of all the challenges that they had. Then in Pakistan, by the grace of Allah, in the initial period, we saw great progress of Ahmadiyyat. At that stage, it was said that any officer who was honest and had integrity must be an Ahmadi. So the Ahmadis during that period were seen as the true reflection of true Islam during that period. And a lot of people accepted Ahmadiyyat as a result. And the Jamaat grew. But then under divine plan, a time had come when Allah knew what was going to happen in the future. So Khilafat had to move out of Pakistan. So we know that during the time of Hazrat Khilafat al-Masih III, Prime Minister Bhutto, in his so-called wisdom, chose to declare us as non-Muslims. And he thought that he was doing a big favor to the Muslim Ummah. He'd resolved the 90-year question. But then look how Allah dealt with him very quickly. The very person that he had appointed for his protection, that very person became his executor. And that was purely because of divine instruction. Then, of course, Zia-ul-Haq, he enacted laws that made it impossible for Ahmadis to practice their faith in Pakistan. But then see what Allah did with him as well. He was destroyed to the extent that there was nothing left of him. The only thing that was left were his teeth. And when the the Pakistani authorities at that time were making this decision, Hazrat Khilafat Masih III said to them, today you are throwing us out of the pale of Islam, tomorrow you'll throw everyone out of the pale of Islam. And that we are seeing within our own eyes, that is happening every day in Pakistan. Everyone's calling the other person a kafir. And this conflict is going to grow to such a degree that it will destroy that country. It is unfortunate. This is our country. We had very good hopes for the country. But unfortunately, when they threw Khilafat out of that country, they sealed their own fate. But see what's happened with Khilafat. So Khilafat has come out of Pakistan, and we now see that by the grace of Allah, Ahmadiyyat has spread to 210 countries around the world. And we are seeing now, by grace of Allah, that in all of these countries, people are saying that this is the Islam we want, not the Islam of the rest of the people. So they have said that the Ahmadiyyat, the Islam that Ahmadiyyat represents, this is the true Islam, and the rest of the Ummah, even though good people that are in the Ummah, have been grouped together as one group. Here, we are a small Jamaat, we are not a very large Jamaat. And the non-Ahmadi Muslims, we have some 4 to 5 million non-Ahmadi Muslims, and we are only 30 to 35,000. But look at the blessings of Khilafat, that when we have our functions, there are lines and lines of parliamentarians who want to come and be seen on our platform. And when the other Muslims have their functions, you hardly see 1 or 2 people there. Now, they are trying to destroy our mosques in Pakistan. But see what Allah has given us instead of that. Here, this very mosque that we are sitting in is now acknowledged as one of the most beautiful buildings in the world, one of the most top 50 buildings in the world. They are attacking, they're destroying, and Allah continues to bless the Jamaat more and more everywhere. Throughout the world, look at any country. Look at Canada, look at America, Australia, Japan. By the grace of Allah, mosques are being built in large numbers everywhere. So they can destroy 1 or 2 mosques. Allah will give us thousands instead of those. Now, then it comes to education. They are attacking our children. Hazrat Khilafat Masih Sani and Hazrat Khilafat Masih Salis, Rahimullah, they encouraged our children to be the best educated children. In Pakistan, by the grace of Allah, there was a time when the top people in the army, the Air Force, the judiciary, the civil service used to be Ahmadi Muslims. And when Zia Haq came, we put a barrier that no Ahmadi Muslim could progress in any of those fields. So what has happened? All that talent, has come out and spread around the world. Now, by the grace of Allah, the chief prosecutor of the international community is an Ahmadi. One of the best economists in this world is an Ahmadi. And we have people in various levels of political life throughout the world. Ahmadis are coming through. We're only a small Jamaat. But the level of numbers that are coming through is enormous. And that is purely by the blessing of Khilafat. Even Dr. Salam, when his father wanted guidance, he went to Khalifa Sani and sought guidance from him. And look how he then became the first Pakistani Nobel laureate. So today we are blessed that every one of these children sitting here can directly seek guidance from Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen Ayyatullah ibn Aziz. And we are truly blessed, in the UK especially, that Khilafat is in this country. Therefore, I expect the UK to be the very best example of Ahmadiyyat in the world. By the grace of Allah, we have Waqf-e-Nau children in our Jamaat. And a lot of these Waqf-e-Nau children now, under Hazur's direct guidance, are going into different professions. And some of them are going into the Jamia to become Murabbis. And under Hazur's guidance, I have seen young children who come to me to get their forms filled from Jamia, who are completely unsure of themselves at that stage. But when they come out of Jamia, they're completely transformed into Murabbiyan who are very knowledgeable, very upright, with lots of integrity, and they're ready to serve Ahmadiyyat throughout the world. And inshallah, no matter how much the opponents of Ahmadiyyat continue to attack the Jamaat, Allah has promised that this Jamaat will continue to grow. And nobody can stop it. None of the opponents of the Jamaat in Pakistan, or some of them are here in this country as well, they can do whatever they like. Inshallah, they will never stop the progress of Ahmadiyyat. And that is purely because we got Khilafat al-Masih who guides us. And when he gives an instruction, the whole Jamaat gets together in unison and obeys that command. And that is the blessing of Khilafat. And wherever Khilafat al-Masih feels that the Jamaat members are going in the wrong direction, immediately he comes and corrects it. Immediately he brings us back onto the right path. And this is not happening anywhere else in the world. So today when we reflect on this, when we go home, the thing that we now need to reflect on is that as Ahmadi Muslims, are we being true to our faith? Are we a true reflection of Khilafat al-Masih wants from us? are we following the true Islam that the Holy Prophet ﷺ brought and was revived by the Prophet ﷺ? Our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents made true sacrifices to join Ahmadiyyat. A lot of the people sitting here are second and third generation Ahmadis. The danger is that very easily you can drift away. And this is why we have these jalsas, to remind ourselves, what is the purpose? What is the purpose of our creation? Why were we brought on through this earth? And often I have mentioned, especially when I meet non-Ahmadis, I say that the purpose of our creation isn't that we can earn a lot of money, have big houses, big cars, a lot of jewelry, and go on 3 holidays a year. If that was the purpose of our creation, then it would be a very shallow life that we lead. The purpose of our creation is to win Allah's favor and be in unison with His attributes, be one with Him. We do not want to stay in the spiritual stage of nafs amara, which is just a stage where we just exist for existence sake. We not only want to go into the stage of nafs al-lawama, which is the conscious state, but we want each and every one of us should aspire to achieve the spiritual state of nafs mutmainna, which is when you are truly one with Allah the Almighty. But in order to achieve that, you have to rid yourself of all the prejudices that you have in yourself. That's the most important thing. Hate, prejudice, backbiting, these are the fundamental things that destroy human beings. And we must not allow that to happen. We must consciously, every time we think ill of somebody, immediately think about it and say, no. Although it is natural human instinct that we do that, say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to bring myself back onto the right path. It is going to be a fight. There's a lot of hard work attached to it. But if you do it again and again, many times a day, when you pray to Allah the Almighty, pray for yourselves, pray for your siblings, pray for your progeny, pray for your parents, that Allah keeps us all on the right path. And if we attach ourselves to the rope of Khilafat, then we will remain on the right path. But if we deviate from it, then we will be lost to this world. And that is the easiest thing, especially in the West, where you have so many things that take you away from the path of Allah. So for the new people who have come here, I say to you that you've come here having suffered a lot in Pakistan. We are here to help you, to do whatever we can to establish you in this country. But you also must make a pledge with yourselves that you're going to remain on the straight path and not be attracted by the affluence in this society. Because if you run after money, you will destroy your family and you will move away from the path of Allah. Now, we have, especially for our children, we've been very conscious that our children need to be trained from a very early age. As you know that throughout the country, we have started classes, children's classes, 4 days a week. And at every center throughout the country, they should be holding these classes. And the idea is to one of the biggest challenges, as I mentioned earlier, is the new technology. Our children are spending too much time in front of the screens, and if they spend too much time, they can become addicted to it, and that can rewire their brains, and they will have a short memory span if you're not careful. So the idea of the classes also is to remove the children away from the screens, bring them into the mosque. When they come here, they will learn the etiquettes of the mosque. They will forge new friendships with Ahmadi children. They will come and pray to Allah the Almighty. And they will become better human beings as they grow up. So I say to the parents, if you're not already doing that, please ensure that your children are brought here regularly, because you will be doing the greatest service to them, bringing them up as future Ahmadis of the highest quality. Trust me, they will get their education anyway. But unless you bring in the spirituality at the right level, just education itself is not going to be enough to bring them up as good human beings. So you must make a special effort that you bring them here so that they can get Allah's security by coming here. Finally, I would say to you once again that we in this country are truly blessed with Khilafat. Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ayatollah ibn Aziz, is given a lot of love to our Jamaat. He's given a lot of care to our Jamaat. He attends all of our functions. Most recently, we had the Waqf-e-Nau Ijtimaa, Hazur was here. We had the Shura, Hazur was here. Every function that I request, Hazur, in spite of his very busy schedule, has very, very generously given the UK Jamaat time. And this is our true blessing, that you can all go and read namaz behind him. You can go and listen to his Friday sermon in his presence. He individually knows most of you. You can go and seek his guidance directly. I know when I went to Qadian, there were people who had come from different parts of India and Pakistan who'd never seen the Khalifa. All they wanted was that Hazur looks in their direction and makes eye contact with them. And that one eye contact was going to remain with them for the rest of their lives, that they would have lived their lives saying, I saw eye to eye with Khalifatul Masih. So here, Allah has blessed us with everything. Please do not underestimate it. Make sure that we, in every prayer, pray for the good health and long life of Hazrat Amir al-Mu'mineen Ayatollah ibn Aziz and his family, that Allah may continue to shower His blessings on our Jamaat through this great institution. May Allah bless you all. We will end with silent prayer. There's one sad news that I wanted to share with all of you. Just a couple of hours ago, a very staunch member of our Jamaat, a very old member of the UK Jamaat, has passed away. Khwaja Munir Kamar Sahib, who I'm sure a lot of you are aware, he was a regular, he used to give azan at Masjid Fazl. He also was a poet, and he recited poetry at lots of our jalsas. He was also my mamu as well. So, inna lillahi wa inna ilaihi raji'un. May Allah rest his soul in peace and grant solace to his family. Please remember his family in your prayers. Join me in silent prayer, please. آمین.
خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے، سراسر نور و رحمت علم و حکمت کا گلستہ ہے. خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے، سراسر نور و رحمت علم و حکمت کا گلستہ ہے. خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے. خلافت حرز جان و نور عین ہر مسلمان ہے،
خلافت پاسبان امت فخر رسولہ ہے.
خلافت جلوہ قدرت ثانی کی حامل ہے،
خلافت نصرت و تائید ربانی کی حامل ہے.
خلافت درس گاہ علم و عرفان الہی ہے. خلافت اس زمین پر آسمانی بادشاہی ہے. خلافت اس زمین پر آسمانی بادشاہی ہے. خلافت پر تب فیضان و انوار نبوت ہے، نظام اس کا سراسر عکس دربار نبوت ہے. خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے، سراسر نور و رحمت علم و حکمت کا گلستہ ہے. خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے.
خلافت تمکنت اور وحدت امت کی ضامن ہے،
سکینت استقامت عزم اور ہمت کی ضامن ہے.
خلافت لا جرم اس نے حسین اہل ایمان ہے،
خدائے ظلمن کا ایک عظیم شان احسان ہے. خلافت اہل ظلمت کے لیے ایک ماہ کامل ہے. جو سچ پوچھو تو یہ ملت کے ہر ایک فرد کا دل ہے. جو سچ پوچھو تو یہ ملت کے ہر ایک فرد کا دل ہے. نظام مرکزی ہے یہ محمد کی شریعت کا، کناروں تک زمین کے دین کی تبلیغ و اشاعت کا. خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے، سراسر نور و رحمت علم و حکمت کا گلستہ ہے. خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے. مبارک وہ حقیقت جان لی جس نے خلافت کی،
مبارک وہ قیادت مان لی جس نے خلافت کی.
مبارک وہ جو پیوستہ خلافت کے شجر سے ہے،
کہ وہ محفوظ ہر خوف و خطر ہر فتنہ گر سے ہے.
مبارک وہ امام وقت کی جس نے اطاعت کی اور ان کے زیر سایہ اپنے ایمان کی حفاظت کی. مبارک وہ امام وقت کی جس نے اطاعت کی اور ان کے زیر سایہ اپنے ایمان کی حفاظت کی. مبارک وہ امام وقت کی جس نے اطاعت کی اور ان کے زیر سایہ اپنے ایمان کی حفاظت کی. خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے سراسر نور و رحمت علم و حکمت کا گلستہ ہے خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے سراسر نور و رحمت علم و حکمت کا گلستہ ہے خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے سراسر نور و رحمت علم و حکمت کا گلستہ ہے خلافت کیا ہے ایک فضل عظیم رب رحمہ ہے خلافت حرز جان و نور عین ہر